All right, so classic agents in Copilot Studio are still here. They still work, but how long does that actually last? At some point, you're missing out on what the new architecture gives you, and managing a classic agent turns into a chore instead of a tool. So realistically, we have to all think about migrating eventually. So let's look at the two paths to get there. So the first one we're going to explore is the developer route through the brand spanking new CLI plugin. So we're going to check that out. And I'm going to do it through the lens of somebody like myself that has some stumbling what we really need to do to get that up and running and where things are breaking for me. The other one is a little bit of a shortcut I'll show you later on. It's not perfect, but it may be a great non-power user pathway to lift these off the ground and get them over to the new experience. I'm Michael Heath, I'm a nerd, and this is Get Automating.
Get Automating, enhancing humans daily.
All right, so here we are. Let's take a look at the agent we're going to be bringing over into our modern experience. Again, this is an agent I created just on the cusp of the new experience, the new architecture. And so as this is very, very small, we look to expand this, and we want to do so taking advantage of the new experience. So here it is, software request, agent, classic. It is basic. So if we take a look at this, we've got a description, we've got instructions, we've got a tool we're using to create an item in SharePoint. We also have a topic here, right? Basic topic, asking a number of questions. We got some keywords. If it's under 100 in terms of cost, it's going to go ahead and create the ticket in SharePoint. But if it's not, it's going to ask some additional questions, manage your email, and then that works through a Power Automate flow, goes through a condition, and then it finally writes the ticket if the approval comes back, which we have as a start and wait. The knowledge sources here are even just text documents. All right, here we are. So let's get to installation of this Copilot Studio plugin. First thing first, install the latest version of Power Platform CLI. So let's grab that. Let's just grab the Windows MSI. All right, so here we are, Visual Studio Code, VS Code. You want to get to a point where you're at the terminal. If you don't have VS Code, download it, and then make your way to the good old PowerShell prompt. We're going to use npm, and we're going to get our GitHub Copilot package. You can use Claude. I'm using GitHub right here, just because I think it's good to see that pathway as well. All right, so we're using npm. We're going to go grab that GitHub Copilot package right here. Okay, so now we need to get those plugins installed as they were outlined. To do this, I have better luck in just regular PowerShell. You can do this in VS Code. I ran into some errors. If you're struggling, go back into PowerShell. Remember, we do need to set our execution policy if scripts are being blocked. So come in here. Type in Copilot, should bring us right in. We need to authenticate, so we can do so via the login. We're going to log into github.com. So it's going to send me an authentication code. I'm going to enter that right now, and off we go. And once you're passed through, you are connected. And so now we're ready to plop in those plugins as outlined again in the GitHub README Markdown file. We'll grab the first one. Drop in. This one, of course, failed because it is already registered. And then we'll grab that second one. This is just a little affirmation for me. And then there is the second one installed successfully. If you're running into stumbling blocks, this is sort of the pathway that I took. I downloaded Node.js, right? It didn't cover that, but brings npm along with it, allows you to run that, right? You then run that npm, it fetches the CLI package. Then GitHub Copilot CLI, that runs the Copilot command. Then you have the Copilot Studio plugins, which we are going to run here. That's what makes the magic happen. And all while, I'm using Git and VS Code. So if you didn't download Git, right, here is the install for Git. I download that. use the Windows installer. Another stumbling block I had at some point in time when I was installing this, I needed to close out of VS Code, start over again. So, after every install, if you're using VS Code, not necessary, but if you want to be super safe, close it out, reload, go back in, and then Git and VS Code, not necessarily required to start us up here, but throughout the process and how we use it, I think that some of the actions there, especially cloning the agent locally, they are dependent on these. All right, so here we are in the terminal. Get connected to Copilot. And then let's do a double check here. Ask the question, what can you help me do with Copilot Studio agents? And what I'm looking for specifically is that it comes back and tells me it can help me clone and architect for the new modern experience. And here it is. This is what I'm looking for. Migrate, clone, pull, push, publish agents, architect, and generate. Sometimes I'll get a generic response, and if so, do a /exit and restart that session. Sometimes if you'd had to log back into GitHub /login, but you really want to see this particular message here, which tells me that it's loaded MCP correctly, regardless that it does not technically say it's loaded MCP. So the first thing we're going to do is actually clone our agent, software request agent classic in GA-dev. So there we go. It does ask for the Copilot Studio agent URL. Copy paste. All right, Dataverse environment URL or environment ID. Let's come over here. Environment ID. All right. We're going to append clone to GA-dev for the display name. Execute clone of software request agent classic. All right, so clone completed locally and sanitized. We can see that it cloned it out right here. At this point in time, you can work within GitHub Copilot to modify any part of the agent if need be. I'm just going to push this thing over because I can work within the Copilot Studio UX UI, but I do want to review some of the plan of action. Now, after you clone the project, just a bit of advice. Don't move forward to publishing. We don't want to do that yet. So give it a stop point, right? And go back and explicitly tell it, hey, I want to make sure that this is just not a lift and shift, or you're modifying this. We cloned it out. We want to tell it this needs to be converted to the modern experience. So don't do what I did, is get through, publish it, expecting that it created this new experience, this new agent based off the new architecture. We want to make sure that it actually does that, and it will present us with a plan. So that's a little bit of reroute here. You got to be careful of that. Again, this is all in the eyes of the beholder. I'll chalk it up as user error, but just something to look for. All right, so we've cloned out our agent. We've cloned it locally so we can inspect it. Now, this is where I felt I need to be really careful. I ran through this a few times and get mixed results. So I'm going to work through this. We're going to start with a new terminal. So the next step is going to be to use what we clone. We need to inspect it and migrate it to the new loop architecture. All right, so now it's asking us for that pathway, and I'm just going to copy and paste this. This is where it's at right now. This is what we just cloned. I do like the Zava one, but we're going to use the recommended prefix. So again, why we wait? I think it's important, right, that you ensure a couple things are happening here. First of all, the first step is going to be to clone from the cloud, from Copilot Studio, into your local directory. Now it can inspect that, and that's what we have set up here. The next step is to inspect it for the conversion to the modern architecture. And that's the part that sometimes I stumble. Does have this working signal here. Every now and then it says it's working, it tells me it's going to go do a thing, and then it just stops. And all I have to do is kind of respond to it to get it to push forward. So I'm going to scroll back up here just to show you what it's doing. Perfect. Now I have a detailed description. Let me inventory the legacy actions to build the migration plan. This is what we want. If at any time you're asked to publish this or push this, no, then we know we need to kind of walk backwards because ultimately we're wanting it to review this agent and propose new architecture. Again, not a one-to-one mapping. So here we are. We've got an approval gate. This is what you want right here. Look at this. This is so fantastic. It's got the complete migration plan for approval, showing the capability, collecting new software requests, routes it by cost. Remember, as I showed you earlier, applies a $100 a month threshold under auto approved, request of 100, require manager's sign off. We've got approval in here showing us, look, this is the tool that we're using here. It might ask for some connections later to help map those. We even have some gaps in handling decisions here that it's gone ahead and done for us. Now, we can review this in depth. I encourage you to do so. And as we scroll down here, we'll see, look, there's an approval gate. The plan above describes what it's going to do and how it's going to handle decisions, right? These certain pathways. It is not a one-to-one mapping. So we need to keep that in mind. Does it match your expectations? The tool migration decision, migrate SharePoint, create item. Is this correct? Yes, it is correct. That's what I was using. I'm going to go ahead and approve the plan, and off we go. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. I want to reemphasize, I cloned this, right? Started a new terminal, cloned it, and it took me down a pathway. That pathway, I didn't see any plans, no real verbiage of migration. It didn't feel right to me, though I kept on pursuing, and lo and behold, didn't get the outcomes I wanted, which is to see a new agent show up in my Copilot Studio web UI with the new architecture. So I started a new terminal session, hit Copilot, and then said migrate my cloned agent, which I already had, to the new loop architecture. And this is the part we really want to acknowledge, is that then it executes on the migrate skill. All right, so after the journey, when you get the emoji, that is success, right? We've migrated the agent. It's been deployed to the target environment. Let's double check this. This is what we're looking for. We've got our instructions, skills. All right, so some of you may be thinking, okay, hold on here. We have some instructions, we have skills, we have a tool and knowledge, but is this going to cut it? But if you recall, scroll down here. When it's over 100, we have an approval flow action that we're calling for within Power Automate. Now, again, we're going to chalk this up as user error. If I had reviewed that plan closer, I could have called for a tool, that sort of thing, to mitigate this issue. But as it stands right now, this agent isn't going to fire off. It's going to create a software request ticket. It did not create a workflow over here. Again, this is an important reminder that we want to review that plan very closely. Okay, so that was one option. And arguably, that's probably the best option. We need to create these agents, recreate these agents with purpose. All right. Now, my theory is that, there are going to be select applications that IT, enterprise applications that IT may want to use the CLI tool and, do it a little more systematic, a little more programmatically. However, what if you have, thousands of agents owned by your end users? I don't see them using that tool, as great as this tool is. However, maybe just a little bit of a shortcut. Not, again, not moving through the same motions, not creating a plan, creating architecture, but this little button over here, Copilot Chat. I want to take a classic agent and convert it over to the modern loop architecture experience. Now, it can't actually see this, but I like to tell it. Agent is software request agent classic. And then what I'll do here is just start copying and pasting nuggets from this description, clean it up a little bit. Okay, we've got some instructions in here as well. I'd like to grab those. Or about the knowledge sources here. Let's leave those out for right now. I do want to get the topics. So how do I get that topic? I'm just going to come right over here, open the code editor, select all, topic, and workflow. And now we're going to look at the workflow as well. And that topic is calling for an approval flow right here. We're going to look at the flow details. And I'm going to go to the designer. What I like to do here is code view. All right, and we're right there, scraping by. Let's let it rip. All right, so it's going to ask a few clarifying questions here. SharePoint site creates the software request tickets. This guy will submit. So I get a little impatient and I like to ask it, break its concentration, ask it if it needs additional information. See, the user seems to not have picked a SharePoint site. I have. Still needs the SharePoint site information. Which SharePoint site connects the list or contains the list? All right, let's try this again. And it took it that time. So I ran into this before as well, but they have it now. So let's keep going here. Tickets. It's doing its thing. That's what we want to see here, right? Approval workflow for request over 100. All right, fair. Moving right through it now. Building it out. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm going to keep it. I don't need to make edits yet. Let's just keep that. All right. So here it is. Let's go into it. So we have our software request agent. We have one skill. Now we don't have any knowledge. At this point in time, I could have edited it and said, hey, make sure you're using this particular knowledge. I'm sure I could have done that. But for the sake of the length of this video, hey, check it out. So it provided a great shell for us. But if I look over here at this workflow, it's got some good details in it. Submit for manager approval, great inputs, outputs. But if we look over here, this is a classic workflow. This is the workflow that existed. So it didn't actually create a new workflow. However, what we can do here, again, I didn't edit any of this. We're in the designer here. Go back to chat. And I'm going to go back to this chat here. Can you create modern workflows? Yes, it can. I like this. I think that's a good artifact. And maybe it was just too much for it. So I'm going to grab that because it did grab it. You can see that it's trying to build that out. I just think that part got dropped. So let's see here. Let's just play around with this again. Whoops. And then lastly, right here. All right. So now let's see here. All right. So now it's building, analyzing. At one point, it needed the approvals connection. May ask for that here in a minute. Well, it's gone on to building. So we shall see. All right. So here we are. You've got a workflow submit for manager approval. So we'll keep that. Now, we've got it here. It's in draft. So we will need to publish. Let's just view it, approve our email title details. All right, wait for approval. It's got everything mapped like that. Sign to, approve our email. All right, there we are. That should work. Okay, fair. Respond, outcome, good. Save, publish. We do need to publish. Won't show up if we don't publish. Okay, let's go back over to our agents. Software request agent. All right, now we have this in here right now. Good stuff in here. We got a nice description. Might as well grab that. And, this may work, but I'm going to remove it. And then let's re-add it. Okay. Let's verify here. Okay. And I copied that description because I knew it wasn't going to put it there. So I love it. Let's use it. Inputs. That should be okay. Yeah, these should be all right. Okay. So save it out. And I still don't have my knowledge in there. Knowledge isn't that helpful anyway. It doesn't have it in there. But again, I could have done that as a part of the editing process. I'm fairly certain. And again, knowledge, couple clicks, off you go, right? That's not a big deal. Workflows, making us work a little bit. Let's check this out. Line sweep. Okay, I want 250. Work. Uh-oh. What do we have there? Go, we'll approve that. I'll be darned. Your request has been submitted. Issue description. This is all right. It's just fine. I don't care. It's just fine. All right. So we did it. Quite the journey. I feel exhausted. Understand, I'm not a developer day to day. If I can get it done with low code, I will. So I tend to stay away from CLI. It was sort of a venture I take every now and then, right? So most of what you see there could have been just user error, right? We hopped through a bunch of things that I could have taken some extra time, reviewed the plan, and the results may have been different. Also took a look at, hey, how can we chat with Copilot Studio to get us to that modern experience? Both options you should experiment with. There are different personas that may find one more useful than the other. They're different scenarios that would dictate which pathway you might want to travel down. But either way, there you have it. There's two pathways. You choose. Until next time, get automating.